Hello, friends. I'm Wendy Jo, and this is the Grow Podcast. How are you today, Ashley?
I am wonderful. It is sunny, and I just got a massage today. So I am happy.
Ooh.
Yes. I'm here to talk about my massage.
We are not. Today, we are going to talk about God, which
Yes.
I love this topic. And even saying the word, I think people automatically have thoughts, emotions come up. It's very interesting. I noticed that people don't use the word God that much, like in their day to day conversation, that they don't talk about God. They might talk about religion, but not so much God unless it's like, a more intimate setting with someone that they know. I don't. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think God is referenced, but never really talked about. And I think it's one of those, you know, how you don't have political conversations with people?
Right.
Yeah. Like you just, okay, I love your God just like I love my God. And you just kind of let that be. Like you never
Mm-hmm.
have real conversation about what that relationship looks like with your like friends or family or anything.
Well, right. As I was saying, you might hear people talk about religion. I was thinking, they say like don't talk about politics or religion with people. But I think what I meant by that, and of course, I'm living in the Bible Belt now, which I'm not from here. Um, People will love to talk about the church they go to, or happenings at the church, or a frequent question here when you meet someone is they'll ask you what church you go to.
Okay.
But you don't really hear the deeper conversations about God or whatever you call it, spirit, God, higher power. I don't know. I do use the word God for what I my version of what God is, but not everyone does.
Yeah,
And
some people will call it like universal power, the
mhm,
ultimate greater good. Like everybody has a different name or reference to what God is.
right, right. But I think the actual word itself does create some feelings or emotions for many people.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess that's why we don't talk about it as much either. Um,
Right.
because then it creates a conversation that may be fueled in emotion. And a lot of us are scared of that. And so, yeah, I agree. I'll just leave
Yeah.
it there.
Well, and then it's whatever you grew up in, could play a role in that, right?
Mhm.
So, people are raised in different traditions, and they may or may not stay with that as an adult. Although I don't know what the statistics are, but I think many people do stay in the religion they were born in. Um, and in that religion, there are rules about that too. Like I was raised Jewish, and we are not allowed to write the word God. Like it has to be G-D if you're going
Oh,
to
really?
write it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And um, we use Hebrew a lot too. So God, the word, God, I guess it was used but also called by other names too. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So I grew up technically Christian. We weren't like strict Christians or anything like that. I did go to church every once in a while. My aunt was a little bit stricter. So my real experience with like, I guess the Christian belief system was really in short stints when I would go visit her.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't believe I have as much of an emotional tie to the concept of God that a lot of other Christians do. Um, I think some of the conversations that are had around God, especially the Christians that I'm familiar with, tend to be in, even though we say we're not supposed to say it in vain, it still seems to be in vain,
Mm.
right? Like, and I don't know how to explain it any clearer than what I just did without giving specific examples. But it seems as if we give our power to God as if God is the one who's supposed to do this stuff for us
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. And so I feel like in a lot of the Christians that I've dealt with, I want to make sure it's clear that I'm not, targeting any particular person or group of people, but it feels like there is this need to, or disempowerment that comes along with the belief
Right.
system.
I see. Right. Like you're not in control.
Right.
I hear that a lot from different Christian traditions. God is in control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God has a plan. Right.
Right.
So this almighty being, which, in this part of the world, there is a lot of Christianity, of course. And so it's, more of a patriarchal God. Judaism too, it's more of a patriarchal kind of God. But it's interesting that for, your perspective is different, much different than mine, because you didn't grow up sort of in the week to week conditioning of a religious tradition.
Right. So I had
So,
and I had a lot of people that introduced me, but never consistently did. So I have like a lot of different types of church experiences.
mm-hmm.
So I never got quote unquote indoctrinated. So I can see differences in like the way certain churches will run, how certain pastors behave, how certain church services were 6 hours versus the one that was about 45 minutes. Those were my favorite.
Right.
Yeah. So so that just was my general experience. I knew it was a part of life. I knew that it happened on Sunday. I knew that sometimes I might have to go. I knew if I complained, I really didn't have to worry because maybe the week after I might not have had to go.
Right. Right. Well, so because you didn't have that indoctrination and conditioning, your own opinions about it sounds like could be formed without someone else's hand in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And it just made me think of a story when I was younger about like offerings in church service.
Uh-huh.
And how, everybody has to put their, if you have a quarter, you put a quarter in the plate and then you pass it around. And some churches do it a lot of times. And I remember when I was a little girl, I was in kids' church, and there was a story that they told us about how the money, if you gave your offering, that the money would show up magically in the most randomest places. And so in this particular story, the kid finds $1 under a car after they gave their offering during church service.
Wow. Okay. Right? That is magical.
Right. And in my head, I was like, wow, such an interesting story. But because I didn't go through that, full indoctrination process, I remember that as an outlier memory. And so when I see it, I'm like, yeah, because money's not showing up under a car because you gave your offering. Like that doesn't.
Right. Yeah. I have spent a fair amount of time in Catholic churches because I was married to someone who's Catholic, and even prior to that, I actually learned to Irish step dance so that I could dance in front of this bagpipe band who was traveling up and down the East Coast in Canada. I was a dancer when I was younger, and it was just a way to travel. But the hitch was it was run by a priest, and I had to go to Catholic Mass every Sunday to be in the band. And, and my mom, who was very culturally Jewish for sure, and not, somewhat religious. She liked the holidays and all, but she just said to me, well, that's okay. You should take blessings from anyone who wants to give them. And then she told me what I couldn't do while I was in the church, because there's rules, right? Sure. So I made sure I followed the rules, but I will say, even though I do feel it's an indoctrination, no matter what religion we're talking about, right? Where you're not really asked to form your full own opinions about what you're seeing and hearing and learning. there is something comforting about the repetition of it. And I found that in the Catholic Church, and I found that in the Jewish temple. After a while, whether you're, specifically learning the prayers or not, you're hearing it over and over again. And so, there's something comforting about that.
Yeah.
However, whenever they would pass around the plate in the Catholic Church, I wasn't familiar with that. We don't do that. I always had this weird feeling in my gut. And to this day, if I'm in a church and they're doing that, I get that same feeling. It just doesn't feel like it belongs there. I don't know.
Yeah. And we, yeah. Well, and see, and I don't know what the ritual is around the collection plate in Jewish tradition, but we put a lot of like, there's music going, the
Yeah.
preacher, like there's a lot happening around you while the plate's going around. You're passing it to the rhythm, and like you just kind of moving, and everybody just putting a hand out. Like it's all part of like just a process that you almost feel like if you don't put anything in there, you're going to kind of be looked at funny. Parents would hand everybody $1, grandmother would hand everybody $1 so they could make sure they could participate in the process.
Right. So it creates community. It's, about, everybody doing it together. We're herd animals. I say that a lot. Yeah. And so it feels good when we're in the herd, even though you and I are definitely really not, we're not part of the herd really. But that feeling of an outsider when you're not part of the herd.
Right.
So yeah, it works for them. And, let's face it, they have lights to pay, pay for the building repairs, whatever, and that, to keep it going. But is it a part of God? Is it a necessary part of God? That's the question.
Yeah, you're right. And so I guess my answer would be no, I don't think so. I think that you can have relationship and build ritual around your belief system and who your higher power is outside of the church. I think church, like, or religious places, right? I think those places that are deemed sacred for ceremony and ritual, I think that there is value in that. I think there's a beauty of it. But I think it's been largely exploited by capitalism and the patriarchy itself. And so, I think that there's always space to feel comfortable and to know where home is and to have ritual and rhythm and, peace and all those things. I think that the thing that's missing from a lot of people in their own relationship with their God is that they haven't taken any time to formulate opinion around the constructs that have been created. Like those are like baseline constructs. Everybody, has some sort of ritual that they participate in, but what is it that we do, and why do I do this version of this ritual? Why do I enjoy this version of this ritual? Why do I feel more connected after I've done this or that? And because in certain cases, like let's say the collection plate is coming by and I don't have $1 to spend. Right.
And you immediately feel like an outsider, number one.
Exactly.
And you question, is God hearing my prayers? Because they've decided that we have to all participate in this ritual of putting in something, whatever we can afford, and that kind of breaks my heart. That I've seen that in those situations. And I've been in, I believe it's Unity Church, where they actually pray over the money. Once they have all the collection, do they do that where you're? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen, I don't remember them doing that in the Catholic Church. Maybe they do, but I'm not sure. And that really, my gut was unhappy with that. Every time, I've been many times, and there are many things that I love about Unity Church, or any of them. There's always some goodness there, right? But is it all of God, or has man stepped in a little bit? I don't know. We'll talk about that more when we come back. Hey there, Wendy Jo with the Grow podcast. We're talking about God this week, and I got to thinking, there are many people who have been hurt by religion, and the name God has become kind of a dirty word, doesn't feel good to many people.
It seems like religion has done more for itself and less for God over the years. You can always make your own personal relationship with God if you choose to, but there are no rules about it, and you're loved unconditionally either way.
And we're back. So we're talking about God today. And what do you call it God? I say it also, which offends some people, but I'm not going to say he. So I don't think it has a gender. Um,
Yeah, I don't either. I was gonna say that. So I don't even think I give it a name because in my mind, um, the name makes it human.
mm,
Like I just kind of feel that way. I feel like it's
mhm,
really my God is an energetic force to be reckoned with. Like that's how I see it. And
mhm.
I think she is divine feminine.
Right. Well, and I'll use she sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I believe that that is also true. When I feel God's presence, what I feel is complete loving energy. Sometimes it's white light, sometimes it's pink, sometimes it's can get a little cloudy in the room for me. Like I feel the energy. It's the energy.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's a palpable energy.
Now, the word spiritual is also, we hear that a lot more these days than we used to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's used in all different ways, right? So, I've heard really devoutly religious people to a particular religion talk about their spirituality, but the meaning is a little different, I think, than someone who's kind of outside of religion and become a spiritual person. So I don't know how to even put this into words exactly. And what are your thoughts about it?
I think anybody can be spiritual. Not everybody can be religious. Um, I think spirituality is just the relationship that you have with your physical body. Um, and that godlike presence is the connective force.
Hmm.
And, however you perceive that, like and see, I also believe in reincarnation, where we
Mm-hmm.
come back for divine purpose. And so everybody's in different phases or different levels of achieving what their divine purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
And so the connection that you have with self may look completely different than what I have with self too. And then, we talk about like finding healing and different healing processes that are required in order to achieve your divine purpose.
Right.
Um, and so wherever people are, like maybe you need in this lifetime, you do need those rules to guide you and keep you on track, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a requirement for this lifetime or this phase of your life, right?
Right.
Or this season or whatever, and I think the biggest thing, regardless of like the definition that you choose to use, I think it's about judging where you are in your current experience, accepting where you are and recognizing where you're intending to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like buzzing, agreeing with with what you're saying. I also believe in reincarnation. I think that when it's a whole thing, I guess. I think when we die, first we see what we think we're going to see, because I don't think God ever wants us really to feel uncomfortable or scared. Or so if you think you're going to see your family, if you think you're going to see paradise, that's what you'll see first, and then you'll be in spirit and just floating as a soul, trying to figure out what you did in that life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think can take a really long time because you're completely surrounded by love,
Yeah.
God's love. It's just pure love. So in that pure love, you're trying to sort out what you did or didn't do, and then when you're ready to come back, you decide what you want to accomplish, and you take with you whatever growth you had in previous lives,
Mm-hmm.
or if you didn't grow, that you take that with you, but there's no right or wrong. You're just kind of trying to work it out, and then you make a decision to come back and achieve certain goals.
Yeah. And it's crazy because we don't know what the thing is that we wanted to accomplish when we came
Right.
back to Earth. Right. So, and that's why I think the judgment part is so important, because we think that this experience is like good or bad or happy or sad or, whatever you decide it is. But none of that matters, because at the end of the day, you came here with a specific idea in mind, but we just don't remember it here. So it's our job to just explore the world for what it has to offer and experience our bodies in different, experiences, and then be able to learn whatever wisdom or life lesson or, make decisions based on that, instead of judging all the things that we didn't do correctly or properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, yeah, so that's the challenge, right? We don't know what our intention was. We have to we don't even have to figure it out. Like if it doesn't happen, you'll just go through that process again. That's what I think anyway. And there's no judgment, like you said, right? So so I think when we do stumble on it, we really know it. Like when you find what you love to do and you're good at it and it feels good, I think you're on the road to figuring out what you wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, for real. I know, like, a lot of times in my previous life experience, I felt like I was always rubbing up against something. Like I was always something was always resisting me. Like bosses didn't really like flow to me. Like everything was just resistant. Being a mom was hard. Going to work was hard. Being a wife was hard. Like all of those things just felt so hard. And it's like, how is it that it's possible that I can live in this life and everything just feel like so difficult? Like I shouldn't always have to feel like I'm walking up the slope.
Right. So it wasn't for you.
Yeah. And I learned that.
Yeah. And we'll be right back.
Sometimes I'm not sure if we talk enough about God. I'm not sure if everybody calls God God. I think everybody has different ways of acknowledging God. But for the most part, I would like to think that we all have some sort of almighty presence, something that's greater than ourselves. And because we all have some sort of higher being or higher presence that we acknowledge, I would like to think that that is the thing that actually connects us human to human. I think the thing that divides us, though, are the differences in how we practice through our religion. But regardless of religion, we're all spiritual beings, and that is how we all can interconnect with each other. So I'm wondering, how many conversations do you have with people about God? And have you found that to be a challenging conversation to have with friends and family? Have you heard of the Cannabis Nursing School? It's a place where cannabis nursing, entrepreneurship, and spirituality meet. The Highline Tribe is waiting for you, and it's so easy to find. CannabisNursingSchool.com.
And we're back. This has been such a rich conversation. It makes me so happy. And I think also just, freely talking about it is important. And what I run across a lot in people is that they're afraid, even if it's not just an acquaintance situation. Like at the beginning of the show, we were talking about how we don't talk about God, we don't talk about religion, or people get really nervous or have emotional feelings about it. I think when we're able to do it, it just feels good, and we start to realize that we have similar thought processes. I don't know.
Yeah, well, so this is a big conversation, right? Like, so the fear of having a conversation is fear of like disrupting our foundational like understanding of the world, right? Mm-hmm. So if I were to have a conversation with you and you're like, no, that's stupid, Ashley, like that would be very disruptive to my experience. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like I build my entire life off of this idea, right? Mm-hmm. And most of us do. And so there is a need, or like a natural need to want to protect that when you're dealing with people, because we spend so much time judging each other.
Right.
Right. Like we're like, well, you're this and I'm that, so that makes us different. You're that and I'm this, so that makes us different.
Right.
And so, but those are very surface level conversations, right? But these conversations are the ones that actually really connect us.
Years ago, I had a little spiritual shop in Massachusetts, and where we put the shop was in this very Catholic neighborhood. And one day I went to open the shop, and when I got there were two people standing in front of the shop throwing holy water on the shop. And it was a priest and another.
Wow.
And yeah, it was intense. And I had put up a sign on the front of the shop the night before, a big, huge sign that said, "God wants you." Okay. So I was poking the bear a little bit, but I really felt that way. God wants you to be yourself. God wants you to have a happy life. God wants you, And so that, it was the next morning they were there with the holy water. And the woman, I just walked by them. I opened the shop and she followed me, and she had a big wooden cross on and she was holding it up like this. Oh my God. And she said, "Do you know Jesus Christ?" Really loud. And I said, "I think I do." And I think he loves me and he loves you too. Yeah. And she just like melted. She completely changed.
Really?
Yes. And we ended up having a great conversation. She asked me why I would put a sign like that up. And I said, I want people to know they're loved. I want them to know that somebody wants them and that there's a lot there for them, but I'm not talking about religion. By the time she left, she was inviting me to the church. And but see, people have so much judgment, like you're talking about, and they have fear and they have beliefs because of the conditioning and indoctrination, or just how things were discussed in their family. I don't know. Yeah. And automatically that puts them, in a fear state, or, on the defensive, I think.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because anything that creates emotion, and fear, guilt, envy are the biggest culprits. That'll kind of put a filter over your face and make you behave in ways that you would never imagine yourself behaving.
Right. And, I think if I had been aggressive back to them, or seemed upset and fearful myself, even though I kind of was. Yeah. Because people, if that had been now, I might have passed out. I don't know, because people have really gone off the deep end. Yeah. But I didn't. Something in me said, it's going to be okay. Just be yourself and see what happens.
Yeah.
So maybe there's hope. That was a long time ago too. And I felt like it gave me some hope that maybe we can understand each other. Maybe God can be a bridge for us instead of creating these walls.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be the ultimate freedom that we could experience.
For sure. Yes. All right. Well, have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.